Not yet. There we go. Okay, I couldn't figure out how to share it on my Others Keeper Facebook page, so we're just here right now. And welcome to my Others Keeper. I'm here with my friend Jenn Hayward from Ontario, and actually she's from Saskatchewan.
From
So we'll,
Saskatchewan,
we'll
yes.
keep her. We'll keep her. But she's currently living in Ontario with her family, and the girls got family dynamics out the wazoo, which we will get to in another episode. But right now, what we really want to talk to her about is Indigenous reconciliation within Canada. Um, you are Métis, correct?
Yes, I'm Métis in Saskatchewan. My family's from the Duck Lake region.
Okay.
Didn't grow up very cultural because back then it was like hide it if you can. But knew I was, worked a lot of bingos. And then through my university days, I took Indigenous studies and I worked with elders, and then I worked for CSC, and I just became more culturally competent. But I have a rule, and I think everyone should follow: don't overstate or understate who you are. There's a lot of identity politics within Indigenous. I said, I know who I am, got my card, all those things, but I also don't need to get into, I don't try and represent people who and their life experience. I do try and tell their stories and share information and be a bridge. But I think it's an important thing for anyone. Don't overstate your qualification or understate. You've done what you've done. You are who you are. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not the powerful person in the room who tries to make people think they're powerful. They just
Yeah.
are, right? So it's kind of the same way with identity in general, right? Like I don't sit there, I'm going to go off topic here a little bit, but I don't go out there and say, I have sex with my husband on the regular. Thank you. Who do you have sex with?
Yeah.
That's nobody's business.
Well, and it's when you're speaking on behalf of something like reconciliation thing. So it's good to get
That's
the
right.
credentials out. So I
It
start
is.
with that, but then I also say I also know a lot. I worked under 134 elders with Correctional Service Canada, and they kind of like forced me into a lot of ceremonies that I wasn't used to, and a lot of I'm very bare level creator, and I have some problems, based on my childhood, things like that. And
Right.
so it was always an interesting take, and I still learn more. My current gig is going up north, and I've never been to fly-in reserves before. And it was, oh, okay, this is new experience. And that's kind of why reconciliation is so important to me, is that do you want me to go right into why it's so important? Because
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. This is
all right,
your time to shine.
all right, thank you. Well, I've been in this field since I graduated university, probably before, um, and I've seen very little change. But I have seen the government do a lot of things that maybe made a difference, maybe didn't. But then a new government comes in and takes over, and those sorts of things. And so when I was working early in my career, I remember someone saying, "If we just helped the kids now, if we actually did, we could save a generation of the trauma." And then 20 years later, it's the same thing, the same problems. We have more children in foster care
Yeah.
than we did during residential schools. We
Yeah.
have overrepresentation in prison. We have racism out the wazoo. And so where I get annoyed, and where I started taking a little more action is the September 30th is Truth and Reconciliation Day, and I really don't like the day, and the reason
Hmm.
is there was a lot of actions and recommendations the government had, and that was the one they did. They made it a federal government servant, like they get it off, the employees of the federal government,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, but okay.
No.
But same with Remembrance Day, whatever. It's them
Yep.
reflecting and participating. But it becomes a big fight. Like if you're on mums groups, definitely in Ontario here, it's like, where can I don't want my kid to be left out. They got to be part of reconciliation. They have to be part. But then what happens October 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and onward, right? And
Yeah.
that's what annoyed me. It became like an event, but not a practice. And so I was on Pinterest, as always, looking at how to get my butt in better shape. And so I came up on one of those, those 30-day challenges that if you do this for 30 days progressively, you'll get better. And I said, what if I did that for, friends? I have a large following or friends of suburban women because I used to own a courier business. And so I knew all the
Mm.
cupcake people. I knew all we delivered for, we just became very well known. We
Oh,
absolutely,
perfect.
I know I ran $1 million business. I ran it into the
Yeah.
ground and, and I don't do it anymore, but I didn't. So I have this following. And so I just put it out there and we made a little link and we had quite a few people sign up. And I was like, crap, I better do it then. And so we did it every day. It was just a little thing because I believe in seed planting. I don't believe in
Yeah.
hitting people over the head.
Yes.
Sometimes maybe, but and so as
Only
I
when you're
moved,
doing it, you know,
yeah.
just
And
yeah.
then it became, well, this is so bare level. Maybe we could do more. And talking to people who were really enjoying it. And there was a group of women who really were, and they were actually talking to each other about because the newsletter I write, and I created a format that has 3 things. And really that's all I need is one is a profile on an Indigenous person and why it's important. Yeah, there you go. Why it's so important is because the media portrays Indigenous people as either exceptionally traditional or exceptionally alcoholic. There's very little in between. And there are
But
just
sometimes the 2, they like to mix too, so
absolutely, absolutely.
yeah.
And listen, there is, but when you deal with, expressing Indigenous stereotypes, even around alcoholism, things like that, like I say that as, yeah, I'm a recovering alcoholic, right? There are
Mhm.
those stories, but not everyone has their own story in life in this world. And so when we talk about, well, broadening our lens, so every person has a story, every Indigenous person does, and I write their story, and then I get a lesson from that. So whatever is prompted me, to okay, maybe we could go into that. So this week, tomorrow drops, and it's a young Indigenous comedian, but also policy analyst, and we talked a lot about intersectionality, and I realize a lot of people don't know what that is, and so I added that to. As the lesson. But so then there's the lesson, and it's never a teaching I'm not allowed to share. So like I have been privy to teachings that I don't want to know, but to things that it would not be appropriate for me because I wasn't given the lessons to share them. I was given the lessons for me, but there's other things that I can certainly share on. So the things that I'm, that's appropriate, I do. And then more importantly is the action prompts. So what good is learning if we do nothing? And sometimes they're really simple, right? It's like, hey, go follow 10 TikTok Indigenous creators and change your algorithms up so you're getting more Indigenous content. Indigenous TikTok is awesome, by the way. There's a lot of good stuff going on. And these small actions. And so we started with that, and now we've added a journal. So it begins a reflection every week. They get a journal page that they can print off if they want to really go into it. And so that's what we created, a very simple, subscription based. If someone can't afford it or they're Indigenous, they don't have to pay. Anyone else is like $5 a month, which is really
Mhm.
nothing for, that's one Starbucks, not even.
Yeah, no, that's
And
not even one of my Starbucks coffees.
yeah, and so if I was writing about my dog, I wouldn't immediately say pay me, but because we're writing about reconciliation is kind of a practice what you preach. So the goal is to create the people who have the most power in society to start making the changes. And I'm going to give you the example that I give everyone, and I think I've written it, and I have preached this because I was fascinated. I was obviously working during COVID because I had the company and we were delivering all the food everywhere.
Mhm.
And during COVID, when one of the shutdowns, so Doug Ford is our premier, and he decided that art supplies were not essential. I have never seen the moms groups blow up like you would not believe. And after campaigns and everything, 3 days it took for him to change his policy, 3 days. And I said, so if that group of women who were like, I'm going to, could harness a little bit. And so it's just seed planting. So take what you want from it, right? And also
Mhm.
it'll state sometimes when it's not really my opinion. It's one of those few things that I do is not a Jenn Hayward production. Like when do my comedy, it's the Jenn Hayward show. When I do, this is not about me. This is my skill set. It could be because I'm light skinned. It could be because how I grew up. It could be just who I am, business. I bridge corporate and culture really well. I understand culture and I understand how to explain culture to people who don't understand culture. And I've done that like with insurance, with finance, and I'm able to help people. So I decided, once my career business tanked, that I'd like to focus on reconciliation. I do a lot of freelance things, but writing this and helping small businesses, create reconciliation plans is actually good for their business. It's good
Yeah.
for growth. I mean, there's a lot of money coming in Indigenous hands now, and good investments to be had, good things. And it's not. I need to correct the media who keep saying, Indigenous people get a windfall. It's not a windfall. If someone's getting money because they had no clean water, that's not a windfall. That's a claim. If someone's getting the money that they were supposed to have gotten every year from the government but didn't, that is not a windfall. That's a settlement. And I really get mad because that is how the news portrays it.
It
Is
is.
that
It really
the
is.
windfall? I was like, no, because it also creates a different mindset to the people who are receiving the money. It's not a charity thing. It's not. You should not have been living with this. You shouldn't have gone to resident. Like, the government is slowly righting some of the wrongs, but then the media is kind of trumping it up a bit and making it. When reconciliation should be about. It's not about the government doing it. The government's going to do what it does, but it has to be a mindset in the people. And it's slow and steady. They do say it's going to take 7 generations. I think we're through a few, but it has to be, as I think Randy explained when we were talking, the one that I'm writing about, or that I've written for tomorrow's newsletter. It's about that we're here together now, not about just look at the bad things people did. People are like, I don't want to inherit, the debt of Indigenous people. Well, yeah, if you inherited money, you didn't earn that, right? And so it's not like it's just looking at how do we go forward and do no harm to anyone. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people don't understand from Indigenous points of view. They don't do harm. That is the goal. So in any settlement that's happened, no white person or non-Indigenous person has lost their land. We froze a bit. No one's lost their land as a result of this. The government has either given up Crown land or money.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Do you want to ask a question now? I just ramble. Hey, so
hey, no, that's fine. You're doing great. And you said there's like a 7-year or 7-generation reconnection time. Does that sound right? I'm surprised it's only 7.
Well, I mean, it really depends when you look at it.
Exactly.
Well, I think 7 is, is a good number too for because the changes that need to be made, right? I interviewed someone who was there when they finally were allowed to be in restaurants. He said, so you went for, I talked to someone who his name is Evan, and he was the chief of Tuduli First Nation. Again, there's so much history. I don't have all of it. I know high level stuff. I know intricate stuff. But I had no idea that this was, they were settled up in Churchill. So they were in this paradise, and then they basically were resettled for residential school, but also to take the land and do things with it. And so then they were resettled back with land. So it was no longer the utopia that it was. And so I had no idea that all of that went on, because that's one little area, one little pocket, because Canada is so big. And so I just want to tell the stories. I want people to reflect and learn to look through a different lens. So you know how you have glasses on right now, right?
Yeah.
And you have them on because you need to correct your vision, right? So it's
like this, I could see that you have a face. I can't tell if you're smiling or not, but you have a face.
Always smiling. No, but no, that's exactly it. And so think about a lens like just glass lenses or, spectacles. And it's, we all have our own viewpoints from our culture, our gender, how we were raised, who our parents are, what geographic, how much travel, our education. And it's not that you have to be a different person, but you have to learn to look through other people's lenses. And so to be able to make any connection with someone, I'm not going to focus on what's different. I'm going to focus on what's the same. I think I may have frozen here. Yeah, we froze just a little bit.
Oh, maybe it was me freezing. Okay.
Oh, maybe. Who knows? But yeah, it's technology. But I forget what I was saying, but it was probably very wise if you didn't see it, people. But
my internet says that it's doing good. I'm gonna hop off for a moment. You continue on. Talk about more about what your news letter's about, and I'm just gonna go check on my internet.
Okay, sure. Yeah. I hope it's not mine. All right. I love that. So there you go. She's back, everybody. um, the newsletter itself is it's really highlighting the diversity of the diversity, right? So we do have the three groups. We have Métis people, we have Inuit people, and we have First Nation people. But again, just assuming someone's Métis doesn't believe this is everything they are. First Nation, this is everything you are. You also have a gender, you have your sexuality, you have, again, all of those things that make up who you are. And the newsletter is here to dispel myths, right? So you're going to learn about people who do policy. You're going to learn about comedians. You're going to learn about singers, entertainers. You're going to learn about traditional landholders. You're going to learn about all the things that the school isn't teaching you, because this isn't a curriculum. This is a reflection piece. This is a once a week, dedicate a little bit of time to reading a short, newsletter, and then doing some reflection exercises, and then seeing how you can apply it, because the so what is so important. You can bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. I can bring someone and train them, and I can't make them care, right? And so
Exactly.
I'm going to tell you about Bob. He's a fella that we did a training with. And he was someone who works in corrections. I can't say more than
Mm-hmm.
that, but just a guy who was a part of our training. And through our whole training, he was such a pain in the butt. Like, he was just like, when we were talking about like why it's okay for status people like Indians to have like a longer fishing line. He's like, everything should be equal. Everything should be equal. And it was just so annoying. And we're trying to explain, to get the difference in privilege and all the things. And then we did an exercise, and it's basically we hold like a ceremony, and it's the community gathering and wishing. Elders are taking a 13-year-old away to a change of age season, ceremony, coming of
Mm-hmm.
age ceremony. And then I or someone else comes in, and we become in as the Indian agent and say, sorry, all the kids here need to go, go to residential school. And then anyone who runs, we'll find them. Anyone who fights back, we jail them. Anyone who,
Hides
and
their
then,
children.
yeah. And so then
Yeah.
what else do? We would take the medicines away, and then we'd make everyone leave, because no more than 2 or 3 were allowed to be gathered. And so he got it, because he was so into the role play that this Bob got it. And he was like, well, this isn't fair. Well, there was no options. And I'm like, that's what we're talking about, right? We're not trying to, when I do training anyway, and again, mine is very based on perceptions and how to change those perceptions. I'm not an
Mm-hmm.
educator, right? I bring all my educators with me, and their teachings, and also I have some of them guest writing and things like that over their
Oh,
profile,
good.
because it's about sharing. It's the newsletter aim is to reach as many people as possible, because if everyone was doing one day, they just spend a little time reflecting, and then maybe talking to someone else and saying, what did you think of this? And you could say, you know what, I don't agree with it. That's okay. No one has to always agree. So we had talked about that's what I had said while I think I was frozen, was that
Oh.
when we focus on what's different all the time, and I'm not saying that diversity is important to focus on, but from a point of view, if that is your entire focus, you're probably going to rule out people who are very different than you. And so I'm going to tell you the story of me and the Zambian nun. In 2016, I was accepted to Coady Institute for their Global Change Leader program. And it was very funny, because the organization that I was representing laid me off due to funding shortages. And that's when we started Go For It. And I told Coady, do you want me to still come? And they're like, still come. So here I am, basically now just a stand-up comedian, a Métis comedian from Ottawa. And my roommate was a Zambian nun. Now, I had a book at that time called Jesus Loves a Crazy Horny Feminist. And
Funny
Sister
book,
Rose,
by the way. If
yeah,
it's still available, you need to read it. It's hilarious.
it's pretty funny, yeah.
Yeah.
And Sister Rose from Zambia, she got the book and she read it, and I was like, I have to live with a nun for 7 weeks who has read the book that's pretty dirty, and she said, Jenny, you're a breath of fresh air, she said. And it was so sweet. And we got along really well. And 2 weeks of living together, she goes, oh my goodness, your husband is a saint. Because I don't like to clean up as much and things like that. So we became friends. And then over time, I ended up visiting. And I was there with someone else. I'm just going to let it catch up. It's doing that. There we go. I was there with another friend of mine, and we just sat there and we talked about how to better the world. And I was so taken because I don't obviously have a fondness for Catholicism, but it fascinates me. And I'll watch all the movies like Da Vinci Code and all that. Like I'm fascinated by it, by all the doctrine and things. I find it very interesting. But as I went there, I was learning so much more obviously I stayed in a nunnery for 8 weeks. And so I know the irony, but that's when I was there. I was like, I just thought Sister Rose was the coolest lady ever. Nope. All 50 of the nuns are amazing. And because they have a philosophy that they don't care if you're Catholic or not. They're here to help you. So they help because they are Indigenous nuns, Indigenous to Zambia. They don't let Irish nuns come over, all that. Like they are an Indigenous sect, and they're using Catholicism to get their good works done. And meeting them, and I was like, that is not what Western Catholicism seems to be. And I know there's a lot of good things happening here and things too, but compared to that, and so watching them. And so they have a farm that basically they used asset-based community development and started with one chicken to now they have an entire farm and an entire like it's amazing. And they have fish ponds, they have pigs, and when I was there, I was sitting, and it's probably 3 times in my life I have felt the Creator, God's presence, like felt it. And that was one of those times where I just sat there and I was like, nope. God's here, Creator's here. Like I can feel it. I asked my friend Sarah was with me, or my partner, to sit down, and I was like, "Can you feel it?" She's like, "I can feel it, right?" And you can feel it. And so the work they do, but if we focused on some of the key issues that we may not agree on from the terms of what I understand of Catholicism around women's rights, things like that, and we may not get along, but it turns out that love and kindness, which is what we're all about, is so much stronger than any political ideology that we may not agree on, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and as such, I've kind of acted as a conduit for her too. We're still trying to get her that hall. I went through the bankruptcy right when I wanted to fundraise for her, and I said that's not going to look good if I'm fundraising while I'm going through a bankruptcy. So but so many people loved her stories and just her laugh, and it is funny to anyone who knows me that I'm hanging out with a nun, but because the way they're
I
doing
have to say, it surprised me a little bit at first too.
yeah, it's not a fit on paper. And I had one friend who said, I just can't go with you. She was going to come, but I can't be around religion. And I said, it is interesting because again, we met so many fascinating women, and of course, we're treated like gold. And I thought that was it too. It's just because we're from away, but we met a friend while we were there, and I invited her for dinner, and it was very funny because I cooked the dinner because the girl, she was young, in her 20s, told me that she didn't want to eat a lot of carbs and stuff. And I said, okay, so I'll cook some meat heavy things. And I cooked this. And there's this little nun, Christina, and she goes, Jenny, where's the rest of the food? We have a guest coming. And they kicked me out of the kitchen, and they cooked an entire feast. And after that night, her name is Gigi, if she's watching. Hey, Gigi. She said, I have never been that welcomed in my life. And she's from Zambia. So there's something about these women, and it's trying to extract that. And it is reconciliation. It's they obviously they do not understand Black History Month, right? Because for them, it's just history, right? But they understand colonization. And so they have the Zambian Independence Day, which is a really big thing for them. So there's still a lot of work to do. But their idea of reconciliation is doing what they can for their people, advocating, educating. And because there, of course, Indigenous rights are much different. There's a lot of different practices and things like that. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, why can't we do that here? Like, I know it took a long time, and I get, the churches, had some problems, obviously, and with, their role in the residential schools. I will tell you
Mm-hmm.
this about Sister Rose too. When the Pope came to Canada and did that apology, she actually messaged me and said, I just want to say sorry for the atrocities of our church towards the Canadian Indigenous people. And that's who she is. She's in one of the poorest
Yeah.
nations in the world. And that's what her focus was on.
She's putting
Is,
ownership on her own faith
yeah,
and what was done in the name of that faith, even though, like, as a person of faith, I'm not Catholic, but of a
yeah,
person who does claim Christianity as my faith,
yeah,
I cannot say that that's what we believe, but things are done in the name. Like, I have friends who are Muslim, and they're like, yeah, no, those people who flew into the towers, they aren't Muslim, they're terrorists
yeah.
using the name. And that's
Terrorist,
what,
yeah, that's exactly it.
yeah.
Religion is just, it's interesting. If you can take ego out of it and the need to be right, it's quite fascinating too, because there are
Uh-huh.
some core values that come across almost all of them, right?
Yeah.
And in our 20s, of course, we want to debate religion, because in your 20s, everything, and
Oh
you're
yeah.
on a
I have
foundation.
2 daughters in their 20s. Oh my goodness, things are so black and white. It's like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
it's like,
sweetheart, you will grow up. You will learn."
well, it is, and it's a testament to, here we are, how many years later in our life.
Yeah.
You knew me in my 20s, and we'd have some tense conversations, things like that, and now it wouldn't even, oh, okay, cool, she's Christian, cool, I do
Yeah.
this, and it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. I want to know, and I like the stories behind it. Like, if your
Yes.
faith, anyone's faith, is bringing them comfort, and it's not alienating them from other people, and it's connecting, then I'll go for it, right? Like, it's,
Yeah.
I
If your
believe
faith isn't
churches should,
causing abuse,
yeah,
if you're because there are cults out there that, separate families. Like, if you don't believe letter to letter to letter, this is the same as me, then you're not allowed
yeah,
to talk to your kids, or you're not
yeah.
allowed to come to our church. You're not allowed to. And there are not just cults, there are Christian churches that do the same thing. And it makes me so sad because that is 100% not what God's all about.
No,
Like,
I think
have you
it's,
read the Bible?
I know.
Not you
By the
necessarily,
way,
but
big plug for another book. It's called Lamb, by Christopher Moore. It's the Gospel according to Christ's childhood friend Biff. It is. They actually have used it in Bible college. The guy's not a Christian who wrote it, but he does historical.
right.
And it's funny. Like, he's a funny writer. There's a few scenes, but I will tell you, the character of Jesus, because of course they're filling in the years from
Yeah.
6 to 13 or whatever the case is,
Mhm.
and but they stay true to his character. And then when he dies at the end of the book, he's so personified that I'm just bawling. I've never read the Bible and cried when he died. I'm sorry, but but I but I look back and I was like, you know what? They did not in any way, shape, or form do any form of blasphemy. Some
Right.
crude jokes, some different things, but the character of Jesus itself. So I found that, just give that little, but it's also another way to look at things is, that there was maybe another retelling. Like, different religions have a retelling of the story of whatever their God
You
is,
said
and why are there
Christopher,
so
what's
many.
his name?
Christopher Moore, Moore, Lamb.
Okay.
I've been introducing so many people to it. It's Josh and my favorite book. He reads Douglas Adam. I used to read Jackie Collins. Like, we don't have a lot of crossover with, I like my mysteries and things like that, but we both really like this book. It's one of our favorites, and so we just keep introducing. We're actually going to have a dinner party potluck, to talk about the book, because it's so profound to me. But anyway, so yeah, there you go. I love that. So okay, back to the newsletter. The point of
Yes,
it
yes.
really clearly is to, I would like as many people to subscribe. To me, that's the way to be an outlet. Start with the free subscription. You get the odd lesson and things like that, but also
Mhm.
pay if you can. What made me smile, I guess, was when I got so many subscriptions at the top of it, but they all did the annual one. I was like, ooh, I better not quit, right?
Yeah.
So
Scary.
my
Now there's responsibility.
well, we're treating it like a business, right? So,
Exactly.
So my husband works with me on it, meaning he, trying to sell it to some school boards, things like that. So, because I do believe it's
Mm-hmm.
a very good value. So
Mm-hmm.
he helps me get all those things. He'll help, proofread things, and he also keeps me on task, and which is hard for him, but it's really important when you're doing something like a production like this. And I'm
Yeah.
still a little burned out from the whole running a courier business during the pandemic, losing it, then losing my house, and then living in absolute chaos with a horrible landlord. Like, I'm a country song waiting to happen. And so this is my
No, no,
year.
no.
And so
You've already happened. You're
no, it's true. It's true. Well, that's it. And I have not met. I'm turning 49 in a week or so, and in my
oh,
life,
you're
I've
still a
never.
baby.
Yeah, I know, but I'm telling you, every woman tells me 50 is the best, and I said, I'm feeling it. But they also said when you're 49, you start to relive everything, and you start to really, really
Yeah.
reanalyze everything that you've done. I said, but I've done so much, good and bad, and so
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time alone lately, and not in a depression, but in an introspective, healing and forgiving myself for some things, and for other things, forgiving other people, and just saying, I don't want, once I want to get through, and I just want to be in the moment. Um, with very little responsibility. And so starting this was a way for me to do what I take all of my life experience, and my skill of bridging corporate and culture, and inspiring people who want to make a difference and to share it. And we have had no unsubscriptions, which is
That's
insane, even from the
great.
free level. Yeah, it was, oh, sorry, we
Yeah.
had two, but they were, because they were gifts that expired. Someone bought someone a gift. But it's true, because it every week, it's a very simple commitment for people once a week, and it's so important. And I think people don't understand. And that's not, like, I'm not shaming everyone. That's your job. It's your opportunity to be part of shaping Canada and learning about and it's something that I can tell people, is that people would say, "Oh, you're Métis. This is what." I said, "Here's the thing. I'm not a sovereign person of this land." And I get some flack for that, because I don't believe most Métis are, but I don't have treaties. I don't have things like that, right? And so when I talk on those issues, I do a lot of consultation around other people. Obviously, I've been to a Iqaluit, but I'm not going to tell you, well, I ate seal meat that one time, so I'm an expert on this. So that's why telling the stories of Inuk and Inuit people is important. And it's important then to see the variance of, I've done two comedians, completely different, two First Nations comedians, two completely different things to take away from it. And I think that's what I want to do, is tell stories. I mean, if I could, I'd start a zombie in one too. And I have learned not to overstretch myself. And so
Yeah.
right now, part of my marketing is going and talking about why this is so important to me. And if think about it, that's putting it out there and exposing, and things like that, like in today's culture, is fascinating, because I've done a lot of bad stuff in my past, right? And I don't want someone, like, I don't want to ever be so successful that someone's like, yeah, Jen Haber did this, and everyone's like, yeah, we know she did it, she put it in her book, Jesus Loves a Crazy Horny Feminist. So
Well, there's that.
you know
But I
well,
mean,
that's
I
it.
also don't want to be judged for things that I did in my early 20s.
Yeah.
There's a particular YouTube channel that I watch, and I absolutely love the host, love him. But he holds some views on um, forgiveness, and on the word I'm looking for has escaped me. Just when you repentance, when you change, and
Absolution.
you not absolution, no, but like when you say, I'm sorry to the point that I'm never going to do that again, I am no
Mm,
longer that person.
okay. Yeah.
Okay. So I am not the same person that knew your husband when we were in hair school. Okay.
Yeah,
I
I would
knew
hope
her
not. I've heard the
husband.
stories. I've heard the stories. Well,
Well,
we've lived.
in a way I am, but in a way I'm not. I mean, I'm not the party girl that I once was. I'm not the person who is going to flirt with every man, woman, and child on the street. Like,
Yeah,
it's just not who I am anymore. That was also pre-diagnosis of mental illness. So for
yeah,
me, that the treatment also makes a difference, as well as the maturity and watching things evolve.
lived
Um,
experience and having daughters of your own and
yes,
all the
absolutely.
things like that's your lens, right? Like that's what
Yeah,
you're looking through.
yeah.
And and kudos to you for a project like this, because it seems to be, again, bridge building. And hey,
Hmm.
why don't it's kind of the same thing I'm doing with reconciliation. It's
Exactly.
bringing people together. And if you watch your show and oh, I didn't know that. Like that's why I love stories, but I hate sensationalism. And so I don't like to go to the media, and I just I'm not good orally. Orally, not orally.
Orally.
So yeah,
Yes.
when people just talk to me, and there's a good chance I didn't catch everything you said, right? But it's just that's who I am. So when there's other ways, yeah, I don't know what I was talking there,
See, when I talk, I don't catch everything I said either. So, it's
but
just
okay,
I'm a little bit scattered every now and then, but oh well. It's part of my
that's okay.
charm.
Yeah, no, that's a good thing you're doing here. And I mean, I think I'm doing good things.
Well,
Something my husband really wants me to be successful at, because he's like, I've already
yeah,
seen the difference that it makes. And he says, we didn't go through hell and back in this world to give up and to not be who
no,
we are. Like we bankrupted because of our ethics. We ended up, but we go back, and would we put our house up? Would we take that risk because there was a botched project and the staff needed to be paid? It was the hugest thing we've ever done. And we said, if we went back now, like we wouldn't know we'd be going bankrupt, but if we had that right in front of us, we would
yeah,
still do the same thing.
yeah.
Because I mean, I'm
That's
saying
your
if I knew
character.
going,
That's your own
yeah,
integrity, right? You
yeah.
put your
And
mouth where
so
your money where your mouth is.
yeah, and I mean, I'm also the first one to admit all my faults, right? And so I'm just here to do what I can in however many years a creator says we have, because I learned the hard way. And I don't know if it's just because of my upbringing, because of the different things, but
Yeah,
things were just harder. Choices I made were, well, my mental illness was much higher.
yeah.
So, but that's what I kind of look at this year for, and why writing these stories about other people is so important, is that people like me, and a storyteller and a comedian, and I, write for CBC and all those, I take up a lot of storytelling space. I really do.
Yeah.
And it's okay because I'm good at it and all those things. But wouldn't it be nice to start really profiling other people, and not as an influencer, but as, hey, here's some cool people to follow, and that's what we all do. We share forward what we're most enjoying, right? And I would hope
Hmm.
your show, my newsletter, becomes that kind of thing, is, oh, I want other
Yeah.
people to hear this
Yeah.
nugget of wisdom that Jenn Hayward wrote. I want that other people to know that. And again, that's where I get my little satisfaction, but it's still not about me. The lesson isn't about me. I'm just a conduit. Yeah, I get a little attention, woohoo. But it's not Jenn's story. Jenn's story has been told. It was told, the last 2 years has been told as it happened, thanks to Facebook.
Yeah.
And honestly, it helped me feel really connected to people. And there are people who still say that being so open and transparent was wrong. That, sharing too much
But
of
you also
yourself.
remind people to floss. I
Oh,
mean,
always. And
really,
honestly, I'm sitting here with an abscessed tooth, and I definitely should have flossed more, right? Like that's,
Yeah.
but and that's another project we'll be starting too. But right now we said one thing at a time, so we're focused
Yeah.
on this. And I do a lot of facilitation, comedy, speaking,
Hmm.
but really writing where it's at right now. But if any of your viewers definitely want to reach out, they can. There's the Substack
Is it
there,
Laugh
or
with Jen
laugh with Jenn with 2 N's at gmail.com.
at gmail.com?
Yeah,
I type very slowly. My fingernails are very long.
it's okay. I
Uh,
could have done it, but I'll let her do it. I'm tired. It's an hour ahead here. It's after 9.
Live with Jen at gmail.com. Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a
So
good
yeah,
way to do it.
you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are not only a storyteller, you have done grant writing and stuff like that for government
Mhm.
projects. You do corporate gigs, you do comedy camps for people, especially young women. I seem to recall you just bringing up
Yeah, we do
their
that. But
own
now we're doing it for
personal
Indigenous youth.
satisfaction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I like it. And for Indigenous youth too. And it's
Yep.
fun, because that's what I learned is Hey, there's a lot more funny people out there than me. Like, really, when I sit at these things, there's some people who just have such inherent talent. It's amazing. So there's a really
Yeah.
big comedy scene out there right now. And I'm an idea generator. I swear, it's a problem, and that's what I used to do before. I generate ideas, and then I would just go do them without really
Mm.
planning things out. But I like,
Mhm.
problem solving with other people. Tell me, what you need some ideas for, and I don't
Mhm.
really think about it, and I just come up with a whole bunch of ideas, and they work, and I just do
Right.
that for fun. Like, that's, the ability to help someone else create something is fun. Just to be, we are all
Yeah,
interconnected and all part of each other's journey, and to position yourself to be of the best value to people. I don't see anything
absolutely.
wrong with that. So
Yeah. Well, I was a teacher of English as a subsequent language for a lot of years, and something that I've taught my students over the years is the difference between Canada and the United States is they are a melting pot. They want everybody to become American. We're a mosaic. We want to celebrate the different colors. We want to celebrate our differences because only when you have them separate but intermixed, that's when you
yeah,
make something beautiful. And that's what you're doing with this. That's what I want to do with my channel. I won't do politics, but I will discuss religion because I'm very firm in what I believe, why I believe it, and I know how to answer questions about it. But
yeah,
I don't know everything about Islam. I don't know everything about Taoism or Taoism or Hindu or whatever else like that. Like, I don't
yeah.
know. And I know that there are a lot of people out there who hold um, misconceptions. So, in that way, with your newsletter, what sort of misconceptions do you think you're going to be fighting?
Well, there'll always be people who feel that Indigenous people are getting too much reconciliation, and to the point where someone actually told me they don't believe in the graves, that there's these graves, and I was like, "That's not a thing."
A friend of mine told me that today, actually. And I'm like,
Yeah.
dude,
So
yeah,
it's, you're dealing with that, but you also, the same person who told me that, like, I'm still down to help, I just don't agree with
yeah,
these things. And I said, well, I'm not here to debate those things. I'm here to
yeah,
create my newsletter and what reconciliation means. um
yeah.
so there's that, but there's also apathy. The people who
Mhm.
are reading because they were already the kind of people who want to do this. So how do we continue to plant seeds for people who don't? And that's something, in, I want to say 2005 or 6, there was, whatever, in Saskatchewan, it was year of the First Nation and Métis women, and I laughed because we all knew the stats. There was 35 or something, or no, 350 Inuk people, but it wasn't even included. But anyway, so that's what it was, and the government was like, "Oh crap, we better do something."
Yeah,
And so we sent letters to all the deputy ministers and their staff, and what do? Is they trickle it down to whoever has the Indigenous file. So at this
yeah,
conference, it was all the people who are already doing the work, which is
yeah,
fine sometimes, but this was like a basic awareness kind of thing. And it was just an example of, when you token, an Indigenous person, that's their only role. Well, no, it's they're not the silos person who should be doing all the things. They should be
right.
helping interconnect, how to look through a cultural competent lens. There's many stories, in the prison system of people. Once you go to the underlying issue of why someone is violent, you
Mhm.
can get there. And then you have to be able to look at their past. If someone was, let's say, if someone was, in residential school and was woken up a certain way, and they were abused, then if you're doing the exact same thing in a detention center or whatever,
Wanna
they're
trigger
going
them.
to trigger. Exactly. So,
Yeah,
we could either wait for that person to be untriggered by years and years and years of abuse, or we could just alter how you wake them up. And it's that kind of small thinking that never existed before in some,
yeah,
government and different things. It has to be this way or this way. But you know what? It's all about win-win, and that's what reconciliation is, the win. So that the people, who had so much taken, that everyone is acting, moving forward. Everyone is saying all this happened, and we're all
mhm,
going to be part of the solution. And that doesn't
mhm.
mean, that Indigenous people get more, that it doesn't have to look like that. But what it has to look like is Indigenous people leading it, and providing those conduits. And it's one of the first things that I taught in the reconciliation newsletter was, don't get too excited and woke about everything and then go start initiatives, right? You want to check what's already being done. You want to see how you can help best, but don't do it from a paternal type way.
Yeah.
So, and people take that lesson. It's like, it's when you're called in the moment. It's not about big initiatives, but I always try them. But it's about in that moment in front of you. Is there a cultural reason that something might be happening? Do I need to make an accommodation? Do I need to provide some compensation for something that was lost in the past? What can we do? And I know the biggest thing is about taxpayers. And I'm like, well, I could give you a list of stuff that I don't want taxes to be paid on, right? Like, I think fireworks is the first thing to go. With dogs don't like it. It's pretty, but it seems a really unnecessary thing that we should be spending money on when there are people dying on the streets in Canada. Now I'm just rambling, but that really
Well, no,
bothered me.
dogs and people with combat PTSD, they don't
True.
like it. Or like I've had students, refugee students, who will absolutely shiver at school the day after we have a major fireworks event
Yeah.
because it just is bringing it back, So
Yeah.
you're right. It's not even necessarily one cultural competency. It's trying to open your mind to multi competencies,
Yeah. And
like
that's it. So,
that.
like, in the Indigenous world, it's looking through the Indigenous issue right in front of you. If it's about the
Yes.
Wendat Huron settlement, that's a very specific thing from people in that area. And it's the same. Absolutely. When I look at things, I look at, I look very closely at why are new immigrants and, for lack of a better word, white suburban Christians joining forces in Ontario against the school board. Is because they don't like, the curriculum and feel it's too much pride and gay and gender binary stuff.
Oh,
And
okay.
so
Yeah.
there's sex education and stuff. And so, but they joined in a thing of hate, and then a new form of propaganda is going out, and it's a very divisive issue here.
For sure.
And but it's their commonality caused their issue for their own fear. And I just wish, it's like people who are upset drag queens are in schools. I'm like, do you
I
know
don't
what a
mind
drag queen?
drag queens being in schools and libraries. What I don't like is when they won't let the parents in and
Oh,
say,
to watch
nope,
the
sorry,
thing.
there's no parents allowed. I've heard of, I think, 4 or 5 different libraries who've done that.
Oh,
And
wow.
I think they're worried that the parents might protest.
Mhm.
But if something has to be done without the parents, that's not okay with me.
Well, I hope someone's at least taping it. So
Exactly.
yeah,
There needs to be some accountability of some sort.
I
So,
would
yeah,
I wouldn't send my kid to, I have my kid and they're old, but like, say, Lyndon, I'm Auntie Jen to Lyndon, to the library and just put him in a room and leave. I know I'm going to
absolutely.
watch the kid. It doesn't even matter what it is.
Yeah.
You also want to experience that. So yeah, I
Yeah.
know that, but I'm just
And then the
saying
2
in
of you can
general.
discuss it after, right? And you
Well,
can
yes, that is what we do. We hide things
create
from the kids.
conversation.
That's what I love.
Yeah,
Ideally, this is what I love is, people read the newsletter, and then they, family dinner, they sit down one night a day, a week, and they talk about reconciliation from an early age. Let them ask the questions, find the answers. Like, the information is out there.
yeah.
Find out, is there a round dance? Maybe you guys want to participate. Like, I'm going to go to 2 or 3 cultural events just to experience and witness the art or the beauty, or the dancing or whatever. And like, what are your goals for? So, I mean, that's ideally what I want to see, is um, not everyone in the world subscribing because it would be nice for me. I would like everyone to subscribe so that they are using it as a conduit. And, if you have time for other ones, great. But I think we've got a nice, because there's so much training out there.
Mhm.
But so what? Like, I mean, if people don't care, like,
Yeah.
there's people who know the Indian Act inside out,
Yep.
and all the things that happen, and they're like, oh, so yeah,
Yeah.
to get people to care, that takes its own journey, and the only way to get to that point is discussing it and sitting as society and having these conversations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. I saw on Facebook many, many times over the years this meme that says, so Black Lives Matter. Well, so does mine. Where's my cultural, uh, what's the, oh, now I've totally forgotten.
I know
Um,
what you're talking about is that, yeah.
yeah, where's my white privilege? That's what it was. Where's my white privilege? This is how I grew up. And I used to actually think like that until it was described to me this way. You have white privilege, even if you have had the crappiest life in the world, because if you get pulled over by the cops, you don't have to worry about them hurting you just because of the color of your skin.
Yeah.
That is the basics of white privilege right there.
Yeah, I even say, as I have light skin privilege, right? I'm still
Yes,
Indigenous,
absolutely.
but
Yep.
I was definitely passing, right? Like
Yeah.
it's and having been to Africa, we definitely have a lot of Western privilege that
Oh, absolutely.
um and like when I went up north again, this was the first project I'd ever been up. I've been to a Iqaluit, but it's different than going to like a northern reserve.
Right.
And the some of the poverty that I saw there made me so much sadder than even
Yeah.
in Africa. And that's because it's cold here and it's Canada. And you just,
We're a rich country,
yeah,
like,
and so, I mean, I
wow.
don't have all the policy decisions, but I can say that there's a lot of people really upset because none of the political parties care about Indigenous people really when you look at it, or they will push it off. I love as one of my mentors, Lorraine would say, like, what are their policies around Indigenous inclusion in the political landscape, and what are they doing to actively recruit more or do more? And we'll find the answer is probably not a lot, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
I have another friend who lives in the same teeny weeny itty bitty little town that I do. And he was given the job of working with a particular inner city group and being their cultural liaison because he was the only Indian guy there, right? And
Yeah.
then they started telling him, no, you can't do it this way. Well, how am I doing it? Well, you can't have this resource, this resource, this resource, but that person can, right? And, it's like they give him the title, but not the support.
Hmm.
And I would really like to talk to him about how, as businesses or as government funded agencies, we really need to work at how to um, work better with each other
Yeah.
and actually listen to each other. He was also involved in a court appointed, um, not reconciliation, a court appointed mediation process.
Okay.
Just decide how to do it, not the mediation itself. And he's like, well, you guys are doing it all wrong. And they're like, what? And there was just him and some lawyers and a judge in the room. He's like, okay, can I actually talk? He's like, yeah. So I want to talk to this friend of mine about that. Like, what are we doing wrong? So Jenn, in your opinion, in your educated opinion, because you've had a lot of experience over the years, what would be, say, the top 3 things that we as Canadians or Americans or Zambians or anyone
Mhm.
can do for reconciliation in our own communities?
Um, well, I mean, I think it's the first thing is just to continue learning. So whether it's through a
Mhm.
resource like mine or whatever, find out what you don't know and start learning. I mean, that's the first thing, is just
Yep.
start picking up books, talking to people. Um, the second thing is to listen to what Indigenous people are saying. What do they
Mhm.
feel the solutions are? How would they like things to proceed? And say, hey, that resonates with me. That's how I want to help. Right. So it's just listening to, you can't help every cause, even with Indigenous. Like, there's so many things. And so
Yeah.
what appeals to you, but be open to that. Read about Indigenous issues and Oh, I didn't know that. What is already being done about things? How can I join? I'm not saying people don't create initiative, but I'm saying if we could actually get some momentum on the things already going on, and then actually doing the things, right? And
Hmm.
so, there is um, no maximum, minimum. It's do what you can, and when you're presented with those opportunities, and sometimes they turn you in interesting because the idea is problem solving, and so then
Yeah.
you're essentially helping roll a machine forward, and then more people become exposed to it, and it I don't know if it's ever going to fix, but I know that we can all do better, including myself. That we can all, always, and just in humanity in general, not just. I mean, it's the world needs to start being kinder, um,
Hmm.
and we need to live in a society where like there was a bread scandal, for the love of God, going on, and a bread scandal, and then the government got a big
Yep.
fine for them, but the people who overpaid for bread for years and years got
Yeah.
nothing, and
No.
now it's like three times as much as it was.
Yeah.
That's where we live, and how does it
Yeah.
get to that point? So do what we can in front of us, and then just shift our attitudes. And at the end of the day, say, yes, I did what I could, go to bed. Or, you know what? I really wanted to, but I went to a movie. Don't feel guilty about things, but at least acknowledge, okay, I made some time for myself. I could,
Yeah.
I don't go to, there was some really good protests about Colton, the fella from Saskatchewan
Oh
who,
yeah, Colton Boucher.
yeah.
Yeah.
And, they were doing, justice for Colton, but it was freezing rain and I wouldn't leave my house. And I mean, like that's it, right? So I know I'm
Yeah.
telling everyone else to go. I'm an influencer, a bridger, or whatever. But I was like, I'm not going. I'm going to fall down, right? And I think
Yeah.
back then I was still like around 400 pounds, so I fall down, it hurts, and there's
Was
hills.
it that long ago? It's been a
Um,
long time since you were 400.
it's 2016. It was before that, maybe.
Wow. Okay.
COVID
Okay.
kind of took a few years off
It
of
kind of
people.
really
Nothing.
did, didn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's the year that I was in bed for 20 hours a day with a nervous breakdown before COVID. So, yeah, I've lost years due to
Yeah.
a variety of things. So, wow. Okay. Yeah. The Colton Boucher thing was, yeah, that's a whole another dynamic right there. And the thing people need to know is just because you can't do everything, don't do nothing, right?
Yes, that's exactly
Choose
it. Be
one
open
or
every
two
day.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, if we all woke up, I don't know all the
Yeah.
time, but if we all woke up and said, I'm open to what I can do to make people's life better, right?
Hmm.
And I like that better than I'm going to do my 21 days of random acts of kindness, which I put on this spreadsheet months in advance. Like it's not random acts, is my point. And
Yeah.
then, but then you might be closed off to somewhere you're supposed to help because you're
Yeah.
too busy doing the
Absolutely.
thing that no one asked you to do, right? And so that's what I mean. Be open is that it's hard, but I mean, that's what we learned when we were at Cody, and I think I've shared the video, but you know how they had that like we are the world and like aid for Africa, and it was so paternal and so like even when the Christmas song is so cringy, right? Like it's like
Oh, yeah.
like, do they know it's
Do they
Christmas
know
time?
it's Christmas
It's
time? Exactly.
Yeah, they know it's Christmas time. They are a colonized country. They know
That's
it's
exactly right.
Christmas.
And I had students tell me, like, "Teacher, why do they have this song every year? It's awful."
It's so catchy, man. But yeah, so that's what I'm saying is so they had that, and so
Yeah,
then there was a like a flip on that, right? Because like yes, thanks for the money, but the systemic
yeah,
issues weren't covered, etc. And
right.
so it's and if you Google it or YouTube it, it's Africans for Norway, I think, and it's like Africans hearing how cold it is in Norway, and they're
Nice.
sending us radiators, and so they did this telethon. So if people
Oh,
YouTube
that's
that,
fabulous.
yeah,
Okay, you
it's
need to
just so
send me the link
smart.
to that and I'll put it on.
Yeah, and it just shows it's all about how you look at it. Like so,
Absolutely.
let's hear what like
Yeah.
no one wants, like there's so many people who are like, I'm going to do this for the homeless. I'm like, well, hang on.
Yeah.
Let's there's a lot of work being done. How can we add on? Why is that not getting better? Oh, there's no houses, right? Or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be. I
Don't
don't know,
reinvent
but
the wheel. Just make sure
mhm.
you can add a little bit of grease to the
Well, and
wheel.
I'll tell you that I'll give a little kudos from when I was younger to some Christians, because I was in the church and trying to find myself and things like. I was in love with the pastor. Ugh, what a horrible reason to go to church. But anyway,
Kind of, sort of, yeah.
yeah, it was. I was so innocent. But like when I was in my time where I wasn't well, like the first time,
Hmm.
from age 19 to 21 or so.
Hmm.
It was good people from the church who like let me stay, like couch surf and help, and never in a paternal way. I never felt like looked down on or anything. It was just
Right.
lifting me up. And I someone who's been fortunate in my life to have a lot of that. Like, I mean, we just went through a bankruptcy. It's um not great, but we had a lot of help from people that were not even allowed. They said, don't tell anyone I helped you with this. And people coming out and offering, and that's because they felt that that's the kind of people we were. We would always give things forward,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so that's how reconciliation is. Pay it forward. If you have a chance, we're looking like in I was doing a social experiment. We're looking for within an hour of Ottawa, 1 acre of land that someone that the 60 Scoop Network can do ceremony on. And we've had 30 some odd shares already. We haven't found something, but it's definitely being shared out there. And wouldn't it be great
So
if
give a
someone
little bit
was.
of detail on that, because that is an excellent. I really enjoyed watching that information that you had there.
Well, yeah. So the basically there's a group and 60 Scoop, which is I'm learning a lot. I know about the Scoop, but I train it, but to like really hear how the
Hmm.
issues and the feelings they feel out of place in all cultures and things. Um, oh, sorry, I'm so tired. It's what we were talking about. Sorry, my brain. I'm low vitamin B12. Sorry, so I
Oh,
forget
really?
sometimes.
Okay. So you need an
Yeah.
infusion soon. No, we're talking about the land that you're looking to have given to the
Oh
60
yeah,
Soups
so it's
Soups
for
and
them
Wives
to do
Initiative in Ottawa.
ceremony on,
Right.
and so they're currently renting some land, and someone's donated, but they're like, we'd like our own land. I said, wouldn't it be nice if someone was a farmer or whatever, and they had like 300 acres of land? They're like, you know what? Why don't I just give one? And because someone's out there asking for it, and saying, yeah, I could spare 1 acre, and this is going to make a huge difference in these people's lives, and that's part of reconciliation. Now, it doesn't mean everyone who doesn't have land, but it's open. Be open to that call. It may not be land. I can't give land. I have none, right? But it
Mhm.
could. What is it? And sometimes you can't give money, and sometimes people can only give money, right? So do what you can um,
Yeah,
in your day to day life, and be the best version of yourself. But if you're not reading and learning, then you can't really help until you know what the issues are, right? So
exactly.
um,
Yeah.
that's the best thing. It's not just my newsletter.
Education in
Yeah,
every
mine. I
in
don't do
every
any
step.
news in mine. I keep it on lesson and things, but
Right.
there's a lot of good, like APTN. There's some good Indigenous magazines and things online. And
Yeah.
so it's really start immersing. And I'll tell everyone, start with TikTok. Um, TikTok Indigenous creators, just put that in Indigenous TikTok, and you'll find some really hilarious people or some really good learnings. And very much like the Africans for Norway, it's a lot of the satire coming from Indigenous people, kind of making fun of people in the way they from their lens, and it's an interesting way. Start there, just start. I think that's it. It's we've acknowledged there's problems, whether you agree with the solutions or not. We're still all in this together, so let's move forward and do what we can to better the lives of everyone we can, but in this case, particularly Indigenous people.
Yeah. So I have one more question for you.
Mhm.
What is how do you feel about, and what is the difference between cultural appreciation versus
Mm.
cultural appropriation?
Um, I think, well, appreciation I got this actually. People were afraid to buy jewelry because they were
Yes.
worried. Like, no, if you're buying from a legitimate Indigenous creator, by all means, buy it, wear it, tell people where you got it. I think that's the number one piece there is tell people where you got it.
Mm-hmm.
The you can appreciate, you can, but you could learn a bannock recipe and cook it for your family and say an elder taught me that. Isn't that neat? But if you open a bannock truck with it, you're then taking the learnings from a culture without really attributing anything. But you could go
Right.
to the elder and say, hey, could we help you, could we partner on this? You could do that. But so appropriation is really taking indigenous ideas, art, things like that, and monetizing it for yourself. And that shouldn't be done. And it doesn't mean there's not situations where that doesn't work, but you, of course, working with indigenous people and organizations and talking about it. But if indigenous people say don't wear a headdress, because this is why,
Mm-hmm.
and people are arguing that, it makes no sense to me.
Mm.
That
Yeah.
is appropriation,
Well,
that
and
and using.
who else needs to wear a headdress if you're not a chief?
Yeah,
Like,
well, apparently there's some South American headdresses and stuff too. I say yes, but they're different, and
right, right. Oh, they are. Yeah. And
yeah,
African different headdresses and such as well.
yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
exactly. And to me, it doesn't matter. Like if I was listening to something about Zambian culture, and I was like, huh, I don't agree with that, right? Like I'm not going to argue with them. I will discuss because I like to hear the genesis of thoughts and things like that. But I bought a lot of baskets my first trip because there was a group
You're
of
just a basket case is what you are.
pretty much, yeah. There was a group of women in Chukuni, Zambia, that was doing like a collective, and they're all AIDS widows. So they're raising children from either their son passing or
Wow. Yeah.
and so they have amazing women coming together. This is the kind of work the nuns are doing, right?
Yeah.
And then most of them aren't Catholic, right? Most of them speak English, like they're,
Mm-hmm.
and um, they come together, and I bought all the baskets, and for like $1 each, which I was like, I had to raise them up in price, but they want, and so I come home with all these baskets, and I was like, well, I've tried some fundraising and stuff, but I said I could technically sell them. But to
Yeah.
me, that would be appropriation. That would be taking something. Yeah, I got it from the ground and them, but the disproportionate amount to me would be taking it, selling it based on my experience of going to Zambia, rather, or the women.
Mm,
Backstory behind everyone, and I have that story because I wrote it out
right.
because we originally wanted to sell them for them, and then I just,
Right.
again, it was bad timing. So it would be
Mm, okay.
appropriation for me to make money off the back of the Zambian culture. I'm not Zambian. I have no place now. I'm pretty much indoctrinated. Not a nun. They laughed at that idea, but and
I could just
but
picture you wearing a habit. Just
and they'll be. I think I'd be adorable. But I think they would. Um, I don't know what we're talking. Anyway, I'm very tired. I'm so sorry, everybody. Yeah.
That's okay. And you know what? It has been a while now. It's been just over an hour. So why don't we call it a night?
Okay.
If you want to talk more about this, we can talk more about this on another day. But we are also
Absolutely.
going to talk about your family dynamic with yourself, Josh, and Sarah.
Yes.
And these three people are going to just blow your mind with how amazing their family is. So,
Oh, thank
yeah,
you.
I'll talk to you again. And
Absolutely looking forward to it. And everyone subscribe to her YouTube channel. I'm going to do that today.
And absolutely, go to the Polykindred Market Substack and take a look at that newsletter. It is definitely worth the read.
Thank
Okay,
you.
have a good night.